on where you are, and welcome to this Techstrong learning experience brought to you by AWS and Snyk. My name is Cody, and I'd like to welcome you back. We have an exciting workshop ahead, but before we get things going, we do have just a couple of housekeeping notes I'd like to review. First, today's session is being recorded. So if you miss any of our workshop, perhaps you'd like to follow along later or wrap up at a later point in time, our workshop materials will be available for the next 24 hours, so you can feel free to return to the workshop and complete later if you need. But also, you will be receiving a copy of this recording via email shortly after we conclude this live session. If you'd like to engage with us, and this is interactive, so I'm sure you will, the first option for you to do so is the chat tab. I'd like you to jump over to that chat tab right now and let us know from where you are joining us today. If you have any questions, we do want you to send those directly to our Q&A tab, which can be found to the right of that chat tab. Sending your questions to that Q&A just helps us to give you accurate responses and keep track of the questions as they come in. If you jump over to the handout section, and this is important, click that handouts button, and there is a resource there for you. It just says workshop resources. Go ahead and grab that. It has all of the links as well as the hash code that you will need in order to follow along for today's workshop. We'll do our best to post these links in the chat as they are relevant, but this handout is here for you as well if you just want to go ahead and grab them all at the top. Of course, before we close things out today, we are giving away 4 $25 Amazon gift cards, so be sure to stick around. The topic of our workshop today is secure your container workloads in build time with Snyk and AWS. I'm joined today by Eric Smalling, Senior Developer Advocate at Snyk, and Raj Jeripachula, Senior Partner Solutions Architect at AWS. So Eric and Raj, really appreciate having you both here with us on Techstrong Learning. Raj, do you want to get us started, get things going today?
Yep, sure. Let me know once you see the presentation mode.
We can see it.
Thank you very much. Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. So good to have you here. My name is Shashiraj Jeripotula. I go by Raj. I'm a Senior Partner Solutions Architect at AWS. I'm based in San Francisco, California. And my job is to work with ISVs. ISVs are like independent software vendors, AWS partners like Snyk, Gremlin, and Dynatrace. So my job is to help them in their cloud journey, accelerate cloud adoption on AWS, and help them with all technical integrations in terms of AWS as well as their offerings. So today, your speakers are myself. I just talked about myself. Then we also have Eric Smalling from Snyk. So Eric, can you give a brief introduction about yourself?
Sure. Thanks, Raj. My name is Eric Smalling. I am in the North Texas area, in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. I am a software developer by background, and currently I'm a senior developer advocate with Snyk, specializing in containers and cloud native. I'm a Docker captain, and I've also I've been using containers since the early days back in like 2013 when it was 0.6 version. So been around a little bit. Looking forward to doing this.
Thanks a lot, Eric. So let's quickly get into the agenda today. So today, the purpose of this webinar is to give you some hands-on experience to some of the stuff that we've been building with AWS and Snyk. So today, I will talk a bit about this environment where you'll have real production access to AWS. It's something called as Event Engine that what we use. So today in Event Engine, right, you will have access to go and play with the workshop, learn something new. This workshop will be available for you. That Event Engine workshop will be available for you for 24 hours. That means if you finish your workshop in 1 hour or 2 hours, you will have the remaining 22 hours to learn something new in AWS. Go and spin up some resources, maybe a small cluster to learn, but please don't spin up like big clusters because these are production accounts and this is going to be like a big cost for AWS. So we want to be very cautious about what we are using. Just use what is needed to learn. Don't use like spin up big clusters. That's not going to be like a good practice for us. Then Eric will talk about some of the stuff that Snyk is doing, some of the offerings they have. He will also talk about the workshop, and then we will walk through the workshop. So I think there's a Snyk and HashiCorp resources. This is from the previous workshop. We are not going any HashiCorp today. It will be completely AWS and Snyk today. And the end, we will have an event survey. So please use that link to let us know what you liked, what you didn't like, so that we can work on it. And then next coming up seminars, if there are any areas of improvements, we will definitely look into all those things. So housekeeping, right? So as I said, these are like production accounts. So what you do is like, I will show you, there will be a link. It's also in the handouts. So we'll post the link. You click the link and then you get into AWS access. You will have to either give your email or you have to give your phone number for one-time password to get in, because these are like production accounts, right? We want to make sure that we know that you are the right resources for accessing all these AWS resources. And some of the best practices for using this lab is open a new browser, maybe incognito mode or private browsing mode, because if you're already logged into previous AWS account, there might be some caching that might impact the workshop that we are doing here. So the recommendation is to just open a new browser in incognito mode or private mode, and then put the link that we are going to share with you. Eric, can you put the dashboard.eventengine.run link into the chat? It's already available in the handouts in case you don't get it. So that's what will be the first thing that we will be doing. And then there is something called a hash code. That's what you're going to enter. I will show you all those things. So Eric, you can give the URL of the workshop also. That's the workshop that we are going to run today. So let's start with the event engine, and then I will give it back to Eric so that he can go through the workshop step by step. So the workshop, if done properly, it should be finished within 1 hour or 2 hours maximum. But while Eric is showing you the step-by-step instructions, right, you might try doing those instructions with us, but sometimes, right, it will be hard for you to catch up because there will be like copy-paste commands, like big commands, and you wait for the cluster to be provisioned, all those things, right? So there will be a delay. So you don't need to worry about that. The workshop will be available for you. The URL will be given to you. You have whole 24 hours to finish your workshop. If you are able to catch up with Eric and me, then that's fine. If you're not able to, it's okay. You just follow the instructions, and then you have like the remaining 22 hours. And if you are stuck on the workshop, there should be a contact us button that will help you with getting into support, and those people can help you if you're stuck on the workshop. So finally, we will also give you a event survey, as I mentioned earlier. That's where we are going to find out like what you liked in the workshop, what you want to do in the future, so that we can make it better for the others. So let me show you how to get into the AWS event engine that will give you access to AWS console. Okay, give me a minute. So let me share my screen. Okay, tell me once you see something called as dashboard.eventengine.run.
We see it. Can you grow the font a little bit?
Okay. Better?
That'll work.
Okay, so yep, in the chart you could see there is a hash code. Copy that hash code. Don't copy the hash code, just the value. Copy the value starting from 2B7. So everyone, please do this with me. I will be going very slow because this is exactly what you need to get started with Eric's workshop. So any questions, can you put in the chat if you are not able to get access to the dashboard event engine URL and the hash code? If you can say something, then we will know. Otherwise, we are presuming that everything is fine. Okay, I think there's a Q&A. We will talk about those, but today we will concentrate more on the workshop. So I'm presuming everybody is fine. So just accept terms and log in here. So I have two screens, so I'll be looking into the other big screen. So it's not that I'm not trying to look here, but I'm just trying to look into the big screen. So you will land on this page. I'm presuming everybody is able to land on this page. Here you will have a survey link. You will have an AWS console SSH key. So here you click on AWS console. So now that I am logged in, I'm able to come on to this where it will give me the open console. But for you, there will be a middle screen that will ask you to enter your email or your one-time password. So please enter either email or one-time password, and just I'll wait for 2 minutes for you to come to this screen so that I can go to the next screen. So I'll give you 2 minutes, presuming, can somebody put in the chat saying that they are following up with me, or do you want me to slow down or go back? Please let me know. I am also admin for this event, so I can see how many people are logged in. So right now I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, only 6 people are logged in. I think we have, how many participants do we have? Do we know the count? Anyone?
We have 43 with us live.
Okay, thanks a lot. So I will refresh. I think 6 people are successfully able to log in. If few more people are able to log in, then I can go to the next screen. Stuck. So if anyone is stuck, just type in here so that we know. Otherwise, I will go to the next screen. Okay, for the last time, I want to see how many people are logged in. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 people are logged in. So, okay, all good. So as somebody said, all good. Thank you very much. So now, once you come here, there's an open console, there's a copy login link. Either of this will work. I will just click on open console and look at this bold font, right? Try to be in this region, US East 2, because this workshop is created for this particular region. So if you change the region, the console will give you option to change the region. But if you change the region, the workshop content might not work properly. So please try to be in this region. Click on open console. It will create a new screen. It will go into the new screen, and you will see that it is automatically logged into the AWS console. So this is, as I mentioned, this is an actual production account. So please be cautious about what you're using. So now you are able to come to the console. You can type in here anything you want to see, or you click the services button here, and you can have all the services that AWS offers. Some of these services like Internet of Things, machine learning, you might not be able to access because we created this workshop for you to mainly do the Snyk workshop. But if you want to do something else and if it is available, then do it. Otherwise, you might have like some access issues. So that's fine because this is only for this particular workshop. But you should be able to work on some EC2s, create some EC2s, spin up some smart clusters, create some S3s, play with S3s. So I'm presuming all good. We are able to get into AWS console. One last time, I want to see how many people are actually looking in and working into it. Okay, I see some 9 to 10 people. That's fine. So Eric, I think we are good. I will stop sharing and then we can start the workshop. So I will switch off my camera, but I'll be watching the chat just to make sure there are any questions. And I will be coming back on the camera when we end up this workshop. So Eric, all yours.
Great. Thank you, Raj. Let me get my screen share started. Sharing screen. Just a sec. Okay. Can you somebody give me confirmation you can see my AWS console?
We can see it.
Awesome. So the first thing we're going to do is earlier in the chat and in the handout we gave out, there is this workshop that we're going to be working from. The URL is also pinned to the top of the chat. So if you go there, you will see, it's a long narrative. I'm obviously not going to sit here and read it to you, but we're going to walk through this together. And I'm going to try to stick to our time and not get going too fast. But as Raj said, if you do fall behind, don't worry. This recording will be made available to you. You have access to the environment until tomorrow. And each module is fairly self-contained. We're going to set things up in the prerequisites in first module. And then second module we'll do, and third module. If you get behind in the second module, you can catch right back up when we start the third one. And then you can come back to it after the fact and then look at it through these narratives. Also, after the 24 hours are up, there is a section here for doing this on your own. If you want to use your own AWS account, You will need to make sure it's funded with your own money, whatever. There is a way to walk through this on your own later in the if you're watching this recording, a week from now or something. So let's get going. The first thing we're going to do is Raj has already got us started getting us into the event. So we're going to go into this AWS event. You already walked through this, so I'm not going to dwell on this. I'm going to go straight to the Cloud9 Setup tab. Here we're going to talk about what we're going to do to get our Cloud9 IDE environment. This is a web-based IDE if you've not used Cloud9 before. We're using that so that it's easy. You don't have to install an IDE or anything, and it's already pre-configured. There's two things actually pre-configured for you in this event engine environment. You have a Cloud9 instance, and you also have an EKS cluster stood up and ready to go. So you don't have to wait for that to deploy. It's ready to go. And this Cloud9 instance is set up with the right roles that it needs to be able to access that. So the first thing we're going to do is I'm going to go back over to my console, as this tells me to do, and I'm going to go to Cloud9. And that is available through here. If you just type C9 as a shortcut, you'll see it come up. Open Cloud9. And you can get details about it, or you can just simply click this open link, and it will open a tab with the IDE. And once we're in here, you should see something similar to this. So the first step you need to do is make a change to AWS settings here to disable manage temporary credentials. Without getting into the details about this is just to make it work right with the EKS cluster we have. So I'm going to go back in here, and what those instructions tell me to do is click the gear in the top right corner and scroll down on the left till you find AWS settings. In here, there is this last one on here is AWS manage temporary credentials. I'm going to turn it off. And then I can just close this tab. In fact, to clean everything up, I'm going to close the welcome, and I'm going to close this bottom panel and reopen a terminal up here just so it's easier to see. And let me see if I can grow the font here. Didn't anticipate it being this small on the screen. Can you see what I'm doing well, Raj, or do I need to make this more legible?
Yeah, I think it's very dark and it's very small.
Okay. Hold on. Font size. Oh, it's that's what I was doing. Why is it not? That is grayed out. Do you know why that would be grayed out, Raj?
Let me check on my side. Is there a way to change the theme to like bright white mode instead of black? I will also check on my side.
Is that, I don't know if that's any better. It's the font size that I'm more worried about than anything else. Oh, fun.
I'm also checking on my side.
So while we're working on font sizes, let me go back over to the steps.
That's the important part.
We can tell we're doing it live. So once you've done that settings change, the next thing we're going to be doing is actually going to take us away from Cloud9. So while Raj looks that up, we can do this. So the next thing we're doing is we have a repository that you're going to be cloning and bringing into your IDE that has some setup stuff and all of the example applications that we're going to be working with. What we're going to do is we're going to make a copy of this repository, which is similar to making a fork, and then we're going to pull it in. So the first thing you need to do is if you click the link, navigate to GitHub repo for Goof application, you should end up at Snyk partners/goof. And under, this looks different than, somebody has changed this since I wrote the workshop. This used to say make a template, and it doesn't anymore. So instead of making a template, we're going to fork this. So sorry. Again, doing it live. I'm going to log into my GitHub account. If you don't already have a GitHub account, you will need one. And there it is. It was because I wasn't logged in. I'm in a new empty browser, so we don't need to fork it. We're going to go back to the instructions, and we're going to create a new repository from this one. And of course, it knows that I work for Snyk, and it wants me to authenticate to my Snyk account. You won't get that. I'm going to select my personal GitHub account, and we're going to call this Goof, which is the same name it had here. Key here is you want to make sure this is public, and that's stated down here. If you don't, it's not a showstopper, but it's going to make it more difficult to go through the workshop because you're going to have to set up credentials and whatnot. And this isn't a super secure thing, so we're just going to make this a public repository. And let me find the right tab I was in for this. And I'm just going to hit create. So this is like a fork. Like I said, this is going to make in your GitHub account, we're going to make a copy of that repository at the point where it lived. So here we go. That's set up. So at that point, we're going to clone this into our repository. The instructions here say you can make an environmental variable and use that in this URL. You really don't. You can do it that way. I simply am just going to go to this code link, pick HTTPS, and copy this URL. This should look like yours with your name in it if you are following along. To come back to my IDE. Any update on figuring out how to make this? Oh wait, now it works. In this theme, command plus works. So there we go. I assume that's legible to people. So now I'm going to paste that in. Get clone in front of it. I made it public. That'll just pull it right in and see that we're inside of it now. So we just did the cloning of the repo. Now we're going to run a setup script, which is going to install a bunch of tools and get some configuration set up for us to continue. So if I cd into the Cloud9 setup directory, you'll see there's a setup sh and a resize sh. We're going to use each of these. Just run setup. It's going to pull a few things down. It's going to update our AWS CLI command. It's going to install some other utilities we'll be using. And while we wait for this, let me explain. The modules we'll be going through are going to install a couple of applications, and then I'm going to show exploits against vulnerabilities in each of them. One of them is going to be a container-based problem where an application is vulnerable because of the container it's in. And the other one is going to be an actual application library vulnerability that we'll be taking advantage of. And then we'll be talking about how you can use Snyk to find these vulnerabilities and fix them. Okay, and that is all done. When you're done with this, because it made some changes to your bash RC, it's best to go ahead and source that. So if you put /bash RC, that will set up all our environmental variables, and we should be good to go. So now, once you've run that, we're going to configure kubeconfig. This is what our kubectl command uses to authenticate to a Kubernetes cluster, if you've not done that before. And in an AWS EKS environment, we can do that through this AWS subcommand EKS update kubeconfig. This is the name of the cluster that is pre-provisioned in this repository for you. If you were to do this on your own later, if you're watching this later and you name it something else, the instructions over there will let you know you need to use whatever that name is here. So I'm just going to copy that command. And I'm going to come in here and run that. And you can see that it added a new context. And I'm going to get rid of the side tab or shrink it a little bit so we have more room. And now just to test it, we're going to use kubectl to say get nodes, just to see if we can see our cluster, if we're connected okay. Fair enough, there we go. I can see all 3 worker nodes in my EKS cluster. So if you get this far, your setup is going well. So next, because of how many images we're going to be building and messing with doing container scans and other things, we need to increase the size of the EBS store that we're using for this Cloud9 instance. There's an EC2 instance that hosts this Cloud9 instance. And if I were to do DFH, you'll see that we have 68% already used. So we need a little more space. And that's what this command will do. This resize script in here we're going to increase it to 3 gig of space. So I'm going to copy that, paste this in. It'll take just a moment to do its work. And when it's done, I'm going to run this lsblk command, which will give me a detailed list of my block storage. And sure enough, now I have 30 gig. So at this point, we have enough room to go through this workshop and not start swapping or start hitting limits on our EBS volume. So that brings us to the bottom of the clone sample application repository step. And I'm looking over. Okay, cool. Don't see anyone having any problems. Good, we're going to keep going. And now we need to install Snyk in our environment to use it later when we do our scanning. So if you do not already have a Snyk account, you will need a free account in order to access our Snyk vulnerability database. There is a free tier that you sign up for. If you already have a Snyk account, you can just use it. If you don't, when you click this link, it will take you to snyk.io. And I'm already logged in, so it dropped me right into my login. If I wasn't, it would have taken me to something that looks like this, where I could click sign up, log in, and you can use either Google or GitHub. There's a bunch of different SSOs you can use to create an account. And you'll create that account, and you'll be dropped into a page that either looks like this, or you might see something. Oh, I don't have the screenshot in here. You might see something with like a welcome to Snyk. You can big panels or whatever. You can go to, let's see, get back over here. There'll be a link that says skip this in the top right. It says skip this setup, and you'll drop to this looking page where it's just a toolbar on the left and an empty, nothing to do in here. So once you're there, we need to get at your access token. So so that's a good point. The participant 766 is saying this is going to have your API key. That we haven't set this workshop up differently because of the way Cloud9 works. The Snyk auth command, as somebody said, it'll give you, thank you. So somebody's answering my question already. So you could use, instead of doing what this is saying, this is meant to be simple to explain. If you do Snyk auth all by itself, I've already set that my Cloud9 up to have my auth token for the same reason the person was talking about. You do Snyk auth all by itself. I haven't installed Snyk yet. When we get to that part, it's going to give you a URL that, because you're not on your local machine, it won't pop your browser open, but you can copy that into your browser and it'll negotiate and create your, it'll do the authentication for you. And so going back to my steps, I've gotten out of steps. What this is talking about is, or what they're talking about is we've kind of gotten ahead of time. The access token, I'm not going to show you my access token, even though I'm just using a burner account right now. But when you go into your account settings, there we go. I'm not going to click to show, but you can click that little click to show, and it'll give you your personal account token that you can use on your machine to do that. And when you use that with Snyk auth, it sets Snyk up. So, but we need to install Snyk before we can use that. So now that you have your account, we're going to download the Snyk binary and set it up in your path. And this little script should do that all for us. So let me clear my screen. I'm going to paste that in from the website. That's curling it down from our latest build of the Snyk CLI. As you can see, setting up permission and moving into path. So now if I do Snyk version, I have Snyk installed, and that's my version. Now the Snyk auth command, this is what we're talking about. You could run this, copy that URL over, and use that. I already have set an environmental variable in my workspace that follows kind of this pattern that they're doing with this Snyk auth and then the API token. So I'm going to use that. And that's where you would paste in your token if you don't, and if you don't want to use it on, if you don't want to have that here in Cloud9, you can use this URL that you would get. Note that if you are worried about that and you want to minimize any impact, you can revoke and regenerate your token at any time. So if you use your token here, and once you're done, you can come in, click that button, and your token will change. That will change it for everything. So just know that that happens. But yes, so yeah, Snyk API token, that's true. Yeah, the instructions aren't really for using a variable. I just did it because that's how I did mine. But so now once you complete that, you have Snyk and it's ready to go and scan things, and we'll be able to access our vulnerability database to do that stuff. So that's the end of the prerequisites. And we're right at 30 minutes, so I'm going to keep going here. So now we're going to, we already did clone the sample application. We're going to go into building the application that we're going to use. So as this says, we have 3 separate images that we're going to use for the app and some of the vulnerabilities we're going to apply. In order to deploy those into Kubernetes and EKS, we need to put them somewhere. So we're going to create some ECR, Elastic Container Repositories or registries, one of those. And we need to create those so that we have a place to put them after we build them. So the first thing we're going to do is copy all 3 of these lines and come back over to our IDE. Paste those in, and one at a time, those are going to come in, and you'll see this JSON will feed back with a big long string in it called your repository URI. You're going to need that in a second. I'm going to copy that all the way to the .com. I don't need the slash in the actual repository name. I just need this account and domain. We're going to use that. So once we retrieve it, I'm going to put that into environmental variable because we're going to use that throughout this this workshop. So I'm going to say export ECR repo equals, and I'm going to paste that in. I have that now available to me to use, and I'm going to use it right away. Is I need to do a Docker login to set the Docker runtime locally logged into that registry so that I have access to push to it. So I'm going to copy this, and it's going to use that variable that we just saved. And I should get, if everything's working well, come on, demo. There we go, login succeeded. So we are now logged in, and Docker can do its pushes and whatever it needs to do with that registry. So now we build the images. So here we're going to build and tag, and again, we're going to continually use this variable. So if you create a new terminal, make sure you set that variable, or add this to your bash RC if you want. But you're going to need this anytime you're doing builds and pushes from this point forward, and deployments actually. So I'm going to copy these commands, which are going to build all 3 of the images. When you run this, as it says, you need to make sure you're in the right directory. So we're going to get out of this Cloud9 setup directory. I'm back at the top of my Git clone. I'm going to paste this in, and it's going to build the first one and the second one, and you can tell this is live because it's not caching, and it's not cached. It's going to take a minute. While that's building, I'm going to pop back over here. When we're done, if you do Docker images or Docker image ls, you should see all 3 of these built with your long repository name in front of them, and we're going to push them. So the 3 images we're building, you may be curious about the name. So we have a microservice called Thumbnailer. This will be part of the module 2. This is an application that's a microservice that does thumbnailing of images. It's Python Flask-based app. Nothing much really to talk about in the app. The next one is a to-do list. This is a Java-based J2E application that has a to-do list app in it that is vulnerable to many things. And then the third one is a Log4Shell, an implementation of a Log4Shell LDAP malicious server, because we're gonna exploit Log4Shell in this one to show you how that works, because it's an easy one to implement, and it was very prolific to do. So let's go back and see where we are. You'll have to enter on that last one because for whatever reason it won't store the workshop doesn't want to store a carriage return on it. So we're going to build that last one, and while that's happening, I'm going to take you back to GitHub because I want to point something out. You look at the README. I put this warning in there. The applications in this repository, and pretty much anything you get from Snyk that has goof in the name, are vulnerable. Do not take this repository and then go deploy it in anywhere you care about, because there's, especially that to-do list app has some very nasty RCE vulnerabilities in it, and you do not want to expose that to the internet or to your coworkers and have somebody have malware crawling all over your servers. So just, you've been warned, don't deploy this anywhere you care about. Sandboxes only. Works Docker desktop, kind, probably fine, not your dev servers. So let's go back here and see where we are. So the builds are done. And if I do my Docker images, you'll see there it is. It's scrolling on me because of the font's so big, but you can see all three of them are there. So I'm going to push these to ECR. And there they go. When it's done, if you want, I'm not going to do this, but you could open up your ECR repositories and you'll see all three in there if you want to just, for whatever reason, see what they are. And that's going to take a moment. I'm going to move forward while that builds, just because I don't want to run out of time for this module. So the next step is we're going to deploy these to Kubernetes. I can't do this while they're building because they're not there to deploy. But I'm going to walk you through it, and then we'll just real quick do the steps. So the first thing we'll be doing is creating a namespace to kind of contain all this, and we're going to set our context to that namespace so we're working in there. Then we're going to use a nice little tool called env-subst, where we'll take the manifests for these Kubernetes deployments, which we'll look at in a moment, and we're going to pipe it through that into kubectl. That allows me to have variables in my Kubernetes manifests and not have to use another tool like Customize or anything else to deploy them with a variable substitution. So let's look at that while we wait for these pushes to finish. I'm going to grow this back out a little bit, push that last one. We drill in here, and if you go to the manifests folder, you'll see the Kubernetes manifest we're doing, and I'll just open the thumbnailer one. So this is a standard, it's a deployment and a service, nothing fancy here. And there's that image with the environmental variable. This is why that ECR repo needs to be set, or else you're going to be bumping into this every time you do one of these steps. So that's env-subst will put in my long string in front of that. And then of course we have a load balancer type service in front of that, or hosting that, which we'll look at. So I'm going to, now if we come back, good. Our pushes are done, so we can actually do these steps that I'm talking about now. So we're going to do our namespace creation and context setting. Clear my screen. Namespace and context is set. And then we're going to do this cat pipe magic. Please work. Had a bug in this last night, so I want to make sure everything gets worked. So you'll see a bunch of things got created. And now if we do a kubectl get all, I have alias kubectl decay with completion for you in that setup. So hopefully you should be able to do that instead of having kubectl and everything. So now we see two pods creating. We see a service. Sorry, the fonts, it's scrolling or rolling around here. We two services. They've already acquired their external IPs from the ELBs. So we're in AWS. So that happens for you automatically. And you can see that because the pods are still coming up, we're seeing that. So I'm just going to do a k get pods. Done. So this will take a variable amount of time, depending on how long it takes for your cluster to pull those images down and get them started. But once you see both of these applications with a running state, we should be good to go. In fact, if I do a k get all again, you'll see both of them, both services or deployments are now 1 and 1 ready. So now these DNS names, if you're getting ahead of me by any chance, these DNS names take a minute for them to propagate. So if you try to hit them right away, they might not come up as resolvable, but that should resolve itself by the time we get to them. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to store those external load balancer names in some variables so that we can use them easily in the workshop later. So this is just a simple kubectl query to get at them and store them in these variables. And so we'll just run those. And don't forget to enter to get the second one in there. And I'm going to echo them out just to make sure they captured correctly. And they did. So I've got two variables now I can use as we go. Now, you also probably, if you're eagle-eyed and you heard me talking about Log4Shell, you saw there is another deployment happening. It created another namespace called dark web and deployed something into it. So we're going to take a look at those just to make sure they're happy. And sure enough, we see a pod running in there, and we see two services with evil as one of their names. And it's there. Don't worry about what that is for now. Don't look behind the curtain yet. That's just to make sure we're good to go. So we get this far. We've gotten to the end of module 1, and we're ready to move right forward. So at 40 minutes in, so I want to move forward quickly. Let's see. I've got... Thanks. Yeah, my buddy David is in here answering questions for me. Thank you so much for joining and doing that for me. There we go. We have ECR registry configuration problems. Snyk auth works if you have an environmental variable. Yeah, that's... So does anyone else having a problem with ECR registry issues besides the one person that commented? Because I will take a moment to go back and look at it with you. So except without problem waiting at module 2, step 3. Okay, so they're already on to module 2. If Raj, if you can PM, if you're not already doing it, if you can check with the participant 187 and see if there's something we can work through with them. I'm not sure what they've hit. The gist of it is, like I said, if you go back to and this, it's actually back here. When the AWS command to create these is going on, if this isn't working, I actually, the first thing I would check, just without going too long, is go into your settings, which was what, like way back at the beginning, and under AWS settings, ensure that this is turned off, this temporary credentials. By doing that, it allows the instance that hosts this Cloud9 instance, this Cloud9 environment, will then pick up a role that we've applied to it and use it instead of its temporary ones the Cloud9 set up. I'm not a Cloud9 expert, but make sure that's turned off and then try those commands again. If that doesn't work, hopefully we can get you together with Raj and fix that. So let me close my preferences. Let me close that tab. So now, let's get into the fun part. So I'm going to go to Module 2 and Step 3, Exploit Container Vulnerability. So as I said, the thumbnailer. This is a microservice that its only job is to take an image, reduce it to a 100 by 100 size, and give it back to you. This is done inside of a Python application that leverages the ImageMagick convert utility to do that work. It's very convenient since the official Python open source container base image comes with it. So you can just have an application and it calls it and uses it. Now, whether that's a good practice or not is not part of this discussion. Whether you should be shelling out and running code, that's up for your architects to discuss whether that's how you want to do it. But this is this company or this service is using that image or that utility. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a sample PNG file. And if you're playing with this on your own, you can use any PNG you want. The larger the PNG, the slower it takes it is to do this. But we have one baked into this repository. If you go into the thumbnailer directory, you'll see there's this Kate's PNG. It's basically the Kubernetes logo in a PNG. And we're going to use that. And you could literally, if this wasn't on in Cloud9, I could open this on my Mac, and it's just that image. There's nothing else to it. So what we have to do is we're using a tool called PNG Crush, which is installed in Cloud9 for you, that allows you to do image manipulations yourself. We're going to use that tool as the malicious actor here to add a text record into the metadata in the PNG that is formed in a way that includes a path. And the exploit, the vulnerability in ImageMagick that exists in certain versions allows you to if the process that's running ImageMagick has access to a path, it allows you to get the contents of that path and return it as metadata in the image or embedded into the thumbnail image we're going to use. And I've got a shell script around this so you don't have to run all the different weird tools and everything. So we're going to use that now. So we're going to encode the Kate's PNG with that text record, looking for the etc hosts file on the target server. So I'm in the thumbnail directory. And I'm already in there. I'm going to run this script to do that encoding. Now, if you were to research this vulnerability, you could get in and we could take a look at how it does this. We don't have time to do that level of detail, but we now have encoded Kate's PNG here. That is a little smaller actually, because PNG Crush can probably recompress it or something, but it has that metadata in it. So now we want to upload that to the thumbnailer service. So we're going to come down here, and this is where we're going to use that thumbnailer load balancer URL or host name to get at it. I'm going to paste that in. Okay, and now we should have, we have result.png came back, and it's much smaller. If we were to open that in an image viewer, you'd see it is the Kubernetes logo, just 100 by 100 pixels. So now what we want to do is we want to decode this. And there's another tool that's used for this, but it's going to pull out the, it's going to open it up and it's going to look for this raw data chunk that has a base 64 encoded block. And then we're going to do a base 64 decode on it. And again, you can, if you on your own time want to look at the exploit PY, you can see how that works. But we're going to run that. Here's the host file from my Python app, or the pod, the container in the pod in my Python app is running on. So that allows me, it's an information discovery, it's kind of like a directory traversal type, but it's not quite a directory. So any path, any actual path that's readable by the process will work with this. Now, that means there are certain things I've played with those a bit. You can't get at the proc environments, for instance, because that's not a real file. But anyone, whatever the user that's running this process has access to, if it's a real file, you pretty much can read anything you want. So the impact of that is a clever hacker could start using that to start poking around in a server. Imagine if this microservice was behind something else. So I've got a social media app or some kind of app that has a profile for me, and it takes my picture and it shrinks it for storage. And then I can download that picture off the front of the website and find out, oh, that microservice, which might not even be front facing, I can get at files on there. I can start uploading different pictures and see what else can I find. An interesting one for Kubernetes folks would be this example, the service account token. So we'll do this. So let's re-encode our PNG, our Kate PNG with the path var run secrets Kubernetes IO service account token. And now I'm going to upload that. And now I'm going to decode that. That's a credential. Now, if this was a Kubernetes cluster that was like a kubeadm DIY cluster that doesn't have a lot of good security practice, and I have an API, and the API server for this cluster is available, I could take that credential and possibly get in and start poking around in your Kubernetes API, in your control plane. Thankfully, EKS does the managed Kubernetes does the right thing around credentials, and it makes it harder to do something like that. But sorry, I'm reading the comments. Yes, people are getting ahead of me. That's awesome. I've got a typo apparently coming up here, so that's good to know. I will look at that. But this, so this is bad. Now there are other mitigations around we could talk about for this, but the reason this is happening is because we have a vulnerability in the image that we are based on. So next up, we're going to see how we could catch that. So now we're going to scan our image. We're going to use Snyk's container scanner to scan the image. And the arguments being passed here, let's go ahead and start it, and we'll talk about what we're running. So from this directory, which has the Docker file for this image, I'm going to run Snyk container test, pointing it at my local cached copy. This will download it if I didn't have it cached. And I'm giving it some metadata. I'm saying, hey, here's the Docker file I built this with. And this exclude app vulns, this just shrinks the amount of output this is going to give. It's not going to go do a search for things outside of the container, the OS packages and whatnot, just to kind of make it easier to read here on this screen. Wow. So it's the font is causing this to wrap around. That's funny. There we go. So it's analyzing the container dependencies, and in a moment you'll see it querying the Snyk vulnerability database. And come on. what people are alluding to in comments is later on here, I say to copy. There's a typo in here. We'll just actually copy it from Snyk. So those of you who have moved on, if you just use the output of the scan. So here we go. So we got to the end. You can see there's a ton of vulnerability information that's spit out. But the information we're going to look at right now is at the very bottom here. This is the summary of the container scan. And you can see all this information. And it's saying, hey, you are based on 3.11.1, which your image that we've scanned, we've found 427 dependencies and 331 issues. 332 vulnerabilities are, that's an interesting, there's one more. Something we're doing must be, that's, I'll look at that. That's a weird oddity. But we're bringing in 332 vulnerabilities just from this base image all by itself. 6 of them are critical, 17 of them are high. And if we would simply upgrade our minor release to the latest release, we would get down to 4 critical. That's not perfect, but it's a lot better than where we were, and down to a total of 255 vulnerabilities. Now, if we're willing to go to other versions, we wanted to go to a slim version, which we can't because we're dependent on ImageMagick in this one. So that one doesn't, I know that doesn't have it. But there's other options we could go to, and we could look at. So even if somebody who's new to containers, doesn't know a lot about OS level packages and whatnot, I can take this information and have an educated discussion now with the rest of my team, my architect, with my AppSec folks, and say, hey, we should look at this. This looks bad. And if I were to actually search in here, you could search back and find the actual CVE we were talking about that has the vulnerability for ImageMagick. For sake of time, I'm just going to keep moving forward. What I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this version number, and I'm going to come back over to, actually, I'm just going to edit it right here. So if we go into out of manifests into thumbnailer, I'm going to open the Docker file right in the editor here. And I'm going to paste that version in here. And this is what I was talking about. Apparently, there's a typo in the workshop. So we're pasting it right from our shell. Let's save that. Clear my screen to clean things up. And we're going to build it again. Typo there. There we go. There. Now that's just going to reconstruct. It's going to pull the different base image in. And when that's done, we're going to scan it again, same command. Come on, Cloud9, you can do it. There we go. Let me shrink this down again so we have more room. And now it's going to do the same kind of a thing. It's going to analyze all the OS dependencies, the app repositories and everything else that's in this image, do some binary checks on it, and then it's going to query our vulndb to see Docker commands pasting, keep failing, trying to check environment. I can't type. So the person to the people having problems with the commands, did you source your bash RC after you ran the setup at the beginning? That might solve some problems. Not sure why else. And make sure that your ECR repo variable is set, because if you're doing builds without that, you're going to get an empty string for that. So there we go. Now we're seeing that we're, just like it predicted, we're down to 255 vulnerabilities coming in from this base image. So we dropped to 254. I'm really curious on this one, why we're one less. There must be something that's happening in the build that's removing something from the base image. So I'll look at that offline. Maybe I'll tweet about it afterwards. But in fact, demoing Snyk is always fun, because every time you do this, the vuln database is constantly being updated. So that the numbers rarely will match whatever you created for your demo. So this is what we have at this moment in time. So with that done, you can see that that's been fixed. If we were to search back through, we won't find that CVE anymore. And now we can just redeploy the app. So we're going to push it back to ECR to override our old latest. And again, in a real world scenario, you'd be checking in, you'd be using a CI system to do these kinds of things. This is more what I'm showing is kind of the raw, how the tool works. Somebody earlier, I think there was a Q&A about how you integrate this with your code pipeline. And I think I saw some comments about that. Definitely you can we have integrations with many CI systems, or you can just shell out and run the Snyk CLI as a shell step in your given CI system. We have GitHub Actions if you're using those, and you can break a build when vulnerabilities come up. You can do monitoring. You can do all sorts of stuff. You can grab the output as a Serif output and throw it into GitHub security. You can grab it as JSON and process it as needed. Raj has popped his camera up. Do you have something to share with us, or are you just hanging out?
I just want to catch up on the time. So we are at 12:55 Pacific time.
Yep.
How much more we have, Eric?
After we're done with this, is the end of this module, and then I'm going to jump right into the next one.
Okay.
So I think we're going to be okay.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks.
So I pushed the image up, and now I'm going to just scale down and up real quick the pod, or the deployment, I should say, so that it pulls in the new image from ECR. If we do a get pod, it's containing. We'll do a watch on that while it's grinds away, getting that new image. And then I'm simply going to do an upload and decode. We don't need to encode our, there we go. Now if we do an upload of the encoded Kates, make sure we got a new result PNG. So now I'm just going to do a download, or sorry, decode. There we go. You can see I got this error this time. That is because the tooling behind that's trying to pull out that information isn't finding anything to decode. This is because the image magic has been upgraded by the new base image. What's important to note here is the application developer might not know anything about any of this, because they're just reliant on the fact that this tool is what we use, and a vulnerability was found in it. It wasn't his code or her code that had the problem. It is the fact that the something you're dependent on has it. And a lot of developers really aren't Linux experts, or maybe image magic experts, and they're not following those feeds. So it's important to be scanning your images and monitoring them for any vulnerabilities that are found in the things you're dependent on at the OS level. This is just a good an example of a current one. This was fixed this year, back in earlier in the spring. If you were using a scanner like Snyk to find these things, you would have, as soon as that CVE was open and a fix was available, you would have been made aware of it. So, for the sake of time, we're going to jump right forward to the next vulnerability, and this is our to-do list app. So we're going to show how the Snyk SCM scanner, the thing that can reach out and watch your GitHub repositories, can help you for this one. So we're going to go back to when we set up Snyk, and you probably have a tab open to this. If not, you can go to snyk.io and go to here. Go to your projects tab. Again, if you're getting like a welcome to Snyk and there's a bunch of panels, there's a skip that button at the top right. You want to get to where you have your projects, and you probably have nothing here if you're a new user. We want to add a project, and there's a bunch of buttons you can use to do this, but the one I'm going to use is up here in the corner, and you're going to pick GitHub. Now, I've already connected my GitHub repository. I've authenticated it to Snyk. If you haven't done that yet, you'll get walked through an integration process to authenticate to GitHub and give it access to your repositories. And that's what you need to do. And come on, this is, of course, live demo. So we have a little bit of a pause going on right now. That's always fun. While we wait for that, we're going to walk forward, and I'll show you what you're going to see. So if you see this is the screenshot I was thinking of earlier. So if you see something like this, just click the skip for now link. It's going to be in the top right of your screen to where you get to here. If you are new to this, you can go through integrations and integrate GitHub right from there. I've already done it. That's why I didn't do this earlier. So those two steps that'll walk you through entering your GitHub account credentials and getting that set up. Oh, you found another typo, man. So people who are getting ahead, yeah, when you get to the login to the app, it's foo@bar.org, not com. Thank you for calling that out. One Once your integration with GitHub is done, then you're going to do what I just did. You're going to say projects, add project from GitHub. And let's see. Wow, this is still spinning. So if that happens, refresh your page. And that's weird. I wonder if I've got a brand new org. I wonder if it's not all configured. So I have a ton of stuff, but this is all the GitHub repositories I have in my account on GitHub. There's the goof one we created earlier. So I'm going to check that and say add selected repository. So this will take a moment because it's going to now in the background go collect. It's going to pull the repository. It's going to start inspecting it, looking for what we call projects. Those could be, in this case, it's the Java application. It's going to see some Maven projects. It's going to see Docker files. It's going to see Kubernetes manifest, all sorts of things that we scan. And it's going, somebody's corporate proxy detected an exploit. That's awesome. This, if it doesn't pop up right away, I'm just going to refresh this to kind of force this. You'll see the project start being pulled in. And there we go. So yes, it's got, I think there's 16 in here. So it's still importing. We're going to let that grind away. Eventually, you should see a list that has this Maven one that has the word struts in it. That's the one we'll be looking at in a minute. In fact, we don't even need to look at it now. I just kind of want to get you set up. So while that's importing, let's go look at our vulnerability. So the goof to-do list application has the log4 shell vulnerability because it's using an old version of log4j. We'll talk about what that means in a minute, but we're going to go ahead and we're going to use our browser for this. So we're going to do this little echo here trick so that we can get a URL we can use. I'm just going to copy that whole thing. It's basically, it's our to-do list app with /to-do list at the end. And just so I'm not confusing myself, I'm going to get out of that thumbnailer directory and into the to-do list so I can keep track of where I am. I'm going to open a new tab and paste that in. And you should see this. This is the front page of it. If you see the Tomcat manager, that you didn't put the to-do list or you typoed it. So you can do that. You're going to sign in. And as somebody pointed out in the instructions, I tell you apparently the screenshot's right, but I have .com in the step. Sorry, I'll fix that after this. But you want to log in with foo@bar.org, and the foo bar is the password. That is a pre-set up user. You can actually create a user if you wanted to. Sign in with that user. You get here. So this application, make sure I'm not skipping any steps. Nope. So this application is just a to-do list app, and it has a search functionality. So if I do search for pass, I'm going to get this password. If I search for car, I'm going to find the car one. But in the background, like a lot of developers, we're logging what's being searched. In fact, I'm kind of going a little off script, I know, but if we go in here, we look at our pods, and I'm going to do a log. Logs on the to-do list. Oh, man. Okay. My autocomplete failed. You can see I just searched for pass and car. You'll see those down there. So we're logging things, right? Well, a lot of apps log for things. And as a hacker, I might be trying things out on what are, I might know this is a Java app through whatever means. So I'm going to come back to my steps, and I'm going to copy this string. This is an interpolated string, obviously. It's got $, curly brace. What's inside of here is going to get interpolated by the JVM, by log4j, when it tries to log it. And we'll talk about what's in there in a second. Go back over here. We're going to search for that. As soon as I search for that, all of a sudden this vandalism, this graffiti has appeared at the top of my screen. What just happened? Well, without getting into gory details about how log4shell works, basically the log4j library years ago added capability to do JNDI lookups, and it has queried out to an LDAP server that happens to be, in this case, ldap.darkweb.80, because we deployed it in other namespace. This could be anywhere that the application has access to, right? So it has requested something called vandalize. That vandalize context on this malicious LDAP server through various means of redirects, whatever, or through lookups, returned bytecode that contained code to modify the JSP header for this website. So now anywhere I go in this website, that header is there. Now, modifying a JSP is fun and nefarious in its own way, but I could have had anything in that bytecode I really wanted to, because it's going to get executed in the class path of the application. I could start Bitcoin mining, for instance, or I could be doing things to get remote shell into this server. All sorts of fun stuff could happen. So if we go back now to our project list, let me refresh my page. If you're using Snyk to scan your open source dependencies, in this case, a Maven project, and I'm going to drill right into this project, which is what has the dependencies I care about in it for this example, we will see, drum roll, I say in the document search for this, but it's always going to be right at the top. Wow, the score has gone up since I did this last. This is log4j core. So this is log4 shell. And one of the nice things about Snyk's vulnerability scanner for open source and for most things that it scans is it's going to give you a score that's on a scale of 1,000, 1,000 being the worst case possible ever. In fact, log4j, when it hit, was a 1,000. First time I've ever seen a score at something 1,000. This score is made up of things like it's a mature exploit. It's currently trending on Twitter. That wasn't there yesterday. That's interesting. There's a fix available for it, and it has a very high CVVS score, 10, top level. So all of those things combined pop this to a 944. This is a great way to prioritize if you have a lot of vulnerabilities coming in from things, what to hit first. So log4j is obviously, we all know about it, but imagine this happened when this CVE was filed, and you could find out as soon as it happens, because Snyk's monitoring would let you know. In fact, we're going to use Snyk to fix this vulnerability. So we have a button right here. I'm going to click. That will take me to, let's check my time. Okay. It's going to take me to a page that, because there's so many things to fix in this repository, there's a lot of things, but it's pre-checked the one I clicked on just now. There's other ones we could be clicking as well, but not for this demo. So at the bottom of this, I'm going to open fix PR. So this is going to go back to, in this case, GitHub. Could be Bitbucket, whatever you're attached to. And it's going to open a pull request in this case that contains the fix. So we're fixing log4j. If I look at the files changed, it's making the modification to my project, my POM file, to upgrade that version. And I can come down here. I'm just going to go ahead and merge this in now. So you do that in your copy of the repository. It's going to update your repository. Snyk will actually do this for you if you want it to. When it's monitoring a repository like this, you can have auto PRs turned on. So you wake up in the morning to have a pull request for any known vulnerabilities that have been found overnight, even if you haven't changed your code. That's an option. Not everyone does it, but it's kind of cool. You wake up, you have the pull request, you can review it. It's already run through whatever pull request automation you might have. But we've merged it now. So I'm going to come back over to Cloud9. I think I've lost, there it is. And I'm going to CD up one just so I know where I am. And I'm going to do a git pull. We have the fix in place. You can see there's the comment about it from the Snyk bot and the merge comment. So now, we're gonna. I'm sorry. I'm doing it manually. I've walked through all of the stuff I talk about in the thing here. You can see it was 800 a few days ago when I took the screenshot of that. We opened a pull request and fixed it. We did the git pull. We do the build. That's what we're going to do right now. Oh, lost my tab. There it is. We're CD into the to-do list. Build. And then we're going to push it. What this is doing is it's using a new version of log4j in that module, that Maven module, that's not vulnerable. And come on, Maven. There we go. And we've pushed it up. So we'll scale down and up our pod. When you do this, you might get some, when you go back to the app, you might get some cookie or session states, which is what I find that if you try to log in, you get an error, you'll get a 404 or something. If you come out to all the way up here and then go back into to-do list, that seems to clear. There's probably an easier way to do it, but that's a fast way. We're going to log back in as foo at bar.org. Bar. That's where you get the 404 if you don't do that. And we'll copy the same JNDI string back in. And that's there because that's what we searched for. But you notice that the vulnerability didn't happen anymore because this is the version of log4j that's not vulnerable. So no header graffiti, yay. So at this point is where I would say, hey, we're done. We've reached completion. Checking my chats. There are a couple of things I did want to talk about real quick that aren't part of the workshop, but they come up when I show off some of these vulnerabilities. Since we have the scans up on the websites on your account, we go back up to projects here. There's a IAC scanning got done as well. So Snyk has IAC scanning. We can look at your Terraform, your CloudFormation, and your Kubernetes YAML, and Helm as well. But in this case, I'm going to take a look at my to-do list YAML. This is what deployed the to-do list application. And the scanner here, this is, instead of looking at vulnerabilities now, we're looking at policy, like security practice policies. And these are tweakable. This is a vanilla organization I just created, free tier organization. It doesn't have any customizations made to it. So you can come in and change the levels of these. But it's going to tell me some things about this deployment. One of them is that, well, the first one's kind of interesting. I'm running without privilege escalation control. So given that log4shell, is a remote code execution exploit, and I can be running things with it, if I somehow also was able to get a SUID binary up there, or I knew of one that might be on the system, because this isn't set, I could actually become root if I'm not already. Now, in this example, I am root, but that's a different problem. So what this is alerting people to is the fact that if you don't set this by default, it's going to allow privilege escalation. And a lot of people who are new to Kubernetes might not be aware of that. There are other things you can do to using policy and admission controllers to block this, but this blocks it even before you try to deploy it. This is belt and suspenders kind of thing. Another thing, running, there's another one I want to find here. Here we go. This one's a low, I usually, if I was doing this application, I'd make this high. Running with a writable root file system. The fact that I was able to edit that JSP in the web app directory in the folder would not have been possible if this was an immutable container. Now, with Tomcat, you would have to make sure that you have some mutable volumes to put, the compiled JSPs and things like that into. However, this is another one people don't think about a lot. It's a practice. If your app is 12-factor, it's not going to be mutable. So you should make your root file system immutable and make your app work that way. It would block a lot of malicious things like I just did from the start. There's other things you'd be doing here that I didn't talk about. Network policy is not in place here. You should be using network policy. But the Snyk scanners are nice because you can come in here and not only do they tell you the problem with a little bit of information about what the issue is, the impact. You can also drill into the rule itself and find out what CIS benchmark that might have come from, things like that. And you can customize them to say, hey, if I think that this should be a higher level, I could go into my settings for my org, increase or decrease it. I can also say, you know what, we can never do this because this app has to be writable. I can, if I have the privileges, I can ignore temporarily or permanently an issue. And this is true of other vulnerabilities too. But things like that are available here. Not really part of the workshop, but I'd like to throw it in there. So we've got 15 minutes of time on the webinar left. Do we have any questions, Raj, that are unanswered that I can address or that you could address?
Yeah, thank you. I think David Schott is monitoring the chat very carefully. I'm sure he answered most of the questions.
Rockstar.
But if anyone has any question, this is a good time to ask, because we have like about 10 minutes, I would say.
Yeah.
So if you have questions, just put in your questions here. If not, we can give back some time to you so that you can go and learn something new. As I said, we have like 24 hours access to AWS and free access to Snyk. So keep learning something new today, and hopefully we'll see you in the next webinar.
Yep. And as I said, the steps here, I'll find these typos that I'll go through the chat. I'll fix the typos you found. Thank you for letting us know. If you're watching this recording later and the event workshop has expired, you can go through here and go through the on your own section and run this in your own account. So you can do that too. See, I have still a question about workflows, some of the security and devs, where I can find more about your intended methodology use cases. So I will answer from my point of view as a developer advocate. And so you know where we live as DevRel. We're not part of sales. We're not part of we're part of the product team at Snyk. So I look at this from a developer point of view. And Snyk's main goal in life since inception has been to make tools developers love, that they want to use. So we have, in fact, we had a Snyk launch event today that we talked about some other things outside of that tunnel vision view. But the idea being, we want to shift left is a buzzword, but we want to shift as far left security tooling, like we saw today, where if I'm on my desktop, I want to catch these things and inherently be burning down a backlog of vulnerabilities that audits have found, because I'm catching them as I go. We also want to provide the reporting and other tools that AppSec can use to monitor how that's being done. And that's an area that I would direct you to our website. We have plenty of resources on there that talk about what features we have for on the paid tiers for enterprise. And Dave Schatz probably will be answering. Is probably answering you already on that kind of a talk. I didn't point out, if you have questions about this that we're not answering or afterwards, I'm available on most socials at Eric Smalling. So if you hit Twitter and LinkedIn, my DMs are open. If I don't have the answer, we will get you to the person who has the answer. We also have a community Discord server you can join. If you go to DevSecCon, I'll put this in the chat. This is our community. We sponsor this. It's if you go in here and go to join the community and find us on Discord, that we have a Discord server where you can come and ask questions anytime, and we can answer those there. But I think, don't know if I answered their question well. There you go. Thank you. So yeah, the developer adoption link that was posted might be a good resource to check out. It's hard with all of the names being participant to follow who's who.
It has all participant.
Yeah, I would. Yeah, if you are a customer and the account team is probably your best bet to answer that kind of question. I'm just the DevRel guy. If I start being the sales guy, then the developers don't trust me. Thank you, Cody. Yes, we have a survey. Please let us know how we did. Your comments are appreciated. Raj, you have anything else?
No, so reiterating again, these are production accounts. Please be cautious on what you need for the workshop and what you need to learn. Just use it cautiously, and AWS should be happy with those, because we don't want to create like big clusters and make it like a big bill to AWS. So as long as you use it reasonably to learn something new, we'll be happy that you came in, listen to us, and you tried to learn something new today. We have another webinar coming with Snyk on June 26th. We do not have a landing page yet, but keep an eye on. Just keep searching for Snyk AWS. On June 26th, we have another workshop where we'll be again going through some of the things that Eric did. It's slightly another extended version. So we'll be learning more about that workshop as we have the landing page ready. But just keep an eye on it. And every alternate month, we are having webinars, immersion days, which is sort of webinar for Snyk. So just try to learn, come in. These are all free, done for the users to come and learn something new in Snyk and AWS. So yeah, please do come into those webinars. I from AWS will be there most of the time. Eric, David Short, we have a couple other technical people from Snyk who are always coming and doing these workshops for us. So thank you very much for everyone, but do fill in the survey so that we could serve you better in the future webinars. So any closing comments, Eric?
No, as I said, I might have gone very fast through this. I understand 90 minutes is a short time to cover a lot of ground here. Please feel free to do the workshop after the fact and hit us up on Discord or on socials. There's Cody.
No, we are not.
Awesome. So Eric and Raj, thank you both so much. Like we will be converting this on demand as soon as we can. I also want to make sure, are you seeing my screen right now, Raj? There we are. Awesome. It's on the on demand as well. So if you do want to follow along, you do have about the next 23 or so hours. So on that note, if you do want to revisit this after our 24 hours, you can also find this workshop living on the DevOps website at devops.com/webinars, and be sure to look in the on-demand section. Our Avi R, Mubashir H, Bill A, and Colette N. So 2 or 4 winners next 48 hours. If you don't happen to see that email, check your spam folder just in case it happens to be filtered out. All right, so Raj and Eric, I really appreciate both of you joining us. I'd like to thank AWS and Snyk for partnering to bring this workshop together for you. And to everyone who's still here with us, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate your time, and we want to hear your feedback. So I will advise that we've got a link in the it's in the handouts. If you want to go ahead and fill out that, click that blue bubble, and it will pop right up. We also have our own survey that you'll be directed to, goes a long way in
Thank you very much.
fine-tuning our delivery to you. So